I can't stay in my fit. What I'm gonna do if I really want to? But you know, baby, break my mind in two. But you have the key, so open my heart, please, my heart, please. Tell me that I'm beautiful, till counterparts. Well, I like to hide. I'm more what you got. I'm more what you got.
We're here in New York, and you've got a concert this evening. You're playing in New York. Where are you doing this? Where's it happening?
I'm playing at the Midnight Theater in Hudson Yards, and I'm singing some jazz tonight.
Okay, how cool. How cool. So we got to know each other through your previous album, but let's first talk about your new album. It's called Mycelium.
Yes.
Some of our audience might go, Mycelium, what's that? Is that a Roman emperor? But tell us a little bit about this album. What's it about? What you're trying to achieve?
So mycelium is the root network of fungi, and we can't really see them with our bare eyes, but they just connect the entire web underneath the ground. And when I learned about this, it made me really think about interconnectedness, and that's kind of what the whole album is really about. It's about the interconnectedness between people and obviously between our planet, because if there's a dead planet, there's no people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And yeah, you're quite right. I mean, I think some people have got really excited about, fungi, which of course is mycelium as well.
Yeah.
But even my daughter now gets very excited in September. She wants to go out picking mushrooms and things like that. And, there are some parts of the world where it's really a big tradition. But people don't understand that that's just a little bit that you're seeing, isn't it? The rest of it's really all underground.
Exactly. The mushroom is just a fruit.
Yeah, yeah. And quite rightly that, yes, they are part of the ecosystem, that if we damage it at our peril, and revealing in a sense through science, but through music, to make people aware that this earth is so fascinating and so interconnected, and you throw out one bit of the interconnectivity and you in danger of the whole thing collapsing. And I think
exactly.
That's,
yeah. But also what inspired me to learn about it was that in 2022 I was asked to go out on a research vessel in the North Pacific with 25 plankton scientists. Mm-hmm. So I was out on this research vessel with them for 2 weeks, and I learned about plankton, and I'd never been exposed to plankton before. I knew what it was, kind of, but I really didn't know. I didn't know that plankton was everything that drifts, so even massive jellyfish are plankton. Mm-hmm. But anyway, just working with the scientists and looking through microscopes and seeing these incredible microscopic organisms and how beautiful they are and how cool they are, like all the things that they can do, and how important they are to our ecosystem, that really made me fascinated about microorganisms, and that made me interested in also learning about other types of microorganisms. So that's why I ended up with fungi and mycelium. So I went back to Oregon in 2023 and worked with the same group of plankton scientists and mycologists.
Okay.
And then based on all this research, together with trumpeter and composer Danny Janakuchi and visual designer Nichat Dotong, we've created this interdisciplinary suite where everything is based on the research that we've learned from scientists firsthand.
On your previous album, you sampled data to form a basis, in a sense, to inspire the songs that you delivered. Is there any of that going on in this Mycelium album?
Yes, there's some of that going on. I found this mycelium growth equation. It's literally a crazy mathematical equation. And I found some ways of translating it into different musical concepts for okay, this stands for minor or major, this stands for the time signature, this stands for this type of scale, this stands for the interval, and together it just created this really difficult composition that we all needed to play.
Wow.
Everyone in the band was not happy about that
yes,
one.
I can imagine. What has Sirintip got us into? Yeah, exactly. So I remember years ago when I was a journalist on the Times newspaper in London writing an article which was that scientists had discovered the biggest organism on Earth. And it was a mycelium, I think in Michigan.
In Oregon, actually.
It's in Oregon, you're absolutely right. And it's underground and it just stretches miles and miles and miles and miles and miles and nobody can see it. It's kind of like really...
Yeah.
It's slightly freaky and it's slightly kind of just intriguing. And what do they think and what do they do? And, maybe they don't think, maybe they do. I don't know what mycelium get up to, but...
They can do a lot of things, and especially, there are so many species, both for plankton and for fungi, that are still undiscovered. Scientists are finding new species every day, and for me to be on the research vessel in 2022 and having the scientists throw the nets into the water, not knowing what would come up, and then something would come up and they're like, we actually don't know what this is.
Yeah.
Even in 2022 at the time of there's still so many organisms that we don't know about.
Yeah.
So specifically with fungi, one of my coolest fungi that have inspired me is cordyceps, and you might have heard about them from a TV show.
No, tell me.
I think it's called The Last of Us.
The Last of Us?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's this type of fungi that infects the brain.
Ah, okay.
And it makes insects, mostly ants,
Right.
go and infect other ants and then commit suicide.
Right, okay. That's right, the dark side of mycelium.
So
if you're an ant. Yeah.
Exactly. So we wrote a song called Cordyceps, inspired by that, but then we kind of looked at it from the lens of corporate greed and how, our society is built on this. Everyone strives for this thing, and we think that we're all doing it from our own free will, but it's actually these puppet masters, infecting our brains and making us do things that might not be that great for us.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of doing it. Because we've talked about this before, because if you write a climate song or you write a song about nature or something, if you spell it out in black and white, everybody turns off. You have to be more nimble and subtle and not kind of hit people with a sledgehammer on the theme. It's got to be something that they kind of grow into and almost kind of get. You don't even often... You can't mention the word climate change in a song. It switches people off straight away, and it's a strange phenomenon. And when will mycelium come out, do you hope?
In 2025.
Okay.
So we're going to be recording some of it this fall and some of it early next year, and then it will come out after that.
All right.
But you're totally right, and actually what I'm experimenting with mycelium is to not use the word climate change and to use the word nature and trying to come from more of a inspiring perspective to see if there's more people, we can get more listeners and more people are interested rather than that immediate oh my god, the word climate, okay, I'm not going to listen to this, I'm not going to give it a chance, I'm not going to, there's so much of that specifically in the music world or just the general public. And our issues are so urgent that we just need for everyone to get on board.
Although it's really possible, isn't it? There have been people who've written about the sort of state of the planet in songs. The one that many people may know, the Marvin Gaye song "Mercy, Mercy Me," right? The ocean's full of mercury and birds not flying in the sky and things like that. And you can't say that isn't a popular song, So it can be done, right? But it's clearly complex, and maybe in those days people maybe didn't quite fully understand what he was talking about as well. Maybe people now are a bit more aware and they don't want to know about it because it's too scary to imagine. But let's go back to your previous album, because that's the one where certainly we got to know each other, and it was so special to see this album Carbon come out, and all the tracks having some relationship with the climate change story. And it is a special album because some of the tracks are quite instant to get into. Others do require you to do what we always used to do in the past with albums, which is spend a bit of time with the track. And that is a challenge as well in the modern era of sort of sampling and Spotify and things like that. It's like, if they don't get it straight away, it's like, no, next one, click.
Yeah.
But you also had an experience with media on this one that was interesting to explore. And tell us about that. How did media respond to this album, because it was about climate change?
I ran into the issue quite often, and I think that it might have also been the timing that my album came out by the end of 2022, so it was kind of at the end of COVID, and the music industry during COVID was really struggling. So, like we've discussed, climate change is such a polarizing topic. So I received a lot of great feedback from critics that they loved my album, but then they would, and also from festivals and venues, but then they wouldn't necessarily want to write about it because it would be polarizing for their audience.
Right. It's kind of interesting that I was at City. I think this is a not just an American phenomenon, but particularly an American phenomenon, because we had an event the other day on the live show where doctors were talking about climate and health, and what they didn't do was they never talked about air pollution, what actually causes it, because air pollution is caused by the burning of fossil fuels, leading to pollution in the cities and people getting strokes and all kinds of other things. But they kept referring to climate and health and distancing themselves from the elephant in the room, which is the fossil fuels. And when I talked to one, they said, well, we don't want to upset anybody by actually calling out what's doing it.
So yeah, the album Carbon was based on the causes and effects of climate change.
Yeah.
And when I was doing research on different topics and finding ways of turning it into music, one of the things that I wanted to learn more about was renewable energy and what types of renewable energy sources were out there, more than the common ones that everyone knows about, like solar and wind. So I found hydrogen, and specifically green hydrogen, and then I thought it was very interesting to think about hydrogen being the most common element in the universe, but it always wants to bind with another element. So that's kind of the lyrics, is personifying hydrogen and like, oh, I'm the king of the world, but please don't let me be alone.
Yeah, right. And also we'd like hydrogen to bind much more with our economies so that we can get off fossil fuels, which is a nice concept
the
as well.
The potential is really, really, really inspiring.
Yeah. You, when you play with other musicians, these kinds of tracks, does it have an influence on them? Because it's quite interesting, the concept of influencing the music industry. I mean, you're saying with Mycelium, we're like, oh my God, what have we got ourselves into? But do they kind of get it after a while? Do they understand the climate message that's coming out, and do they feel it a bit?
Yes, I noticed that more of my musician friends are, being more vegetarian, vegan around me, and think more about their carbon footprint. And I also, when I have tours, I send green riders to the venues to try to eliminate single-use plastic and those types of things, and more vegan and vegetarian food. Like, you can only do so much. Yeah. But I try to like share it with the musicians I work with and the venues that I work with. Yeah.
I think that's very important to be shown to be doing, because I mean, the album as well was made from bioplastic, wasn't it? Which was, I know, it's an early stage in bioplastic, and it was quite pricey to have it done, but that really is walking the talk, yeah?
And we also record the album in a solar-powered studio. Yeah,
that's also true, yeah. So maybe we've got a chance now to actually listen to the hydrogen track here in the car, which would be really super. So if we can cue it, and let's go.
Yeah.
It's got a great bass. Are these are real drums?
Yes.
When the silence comes to fall, you got it much
throw my head against the wall. Why on earth would I refuse it? Did I lose it? You're playing the air drums. Lose it all. Silence is not my friend when the heat is on. All I know is how to pretend. I can rule the universe. I know, you know.
Great.
I am all around you. I know, you know. So it's that, king of the universe. Please don't let me be alone.
Yeah,
feeling.
It's really clever. It's really clever.
The most common element in the universe.
Yeah, great. And we know that, I mean, as they say, we were going to be in a hydrogen car. We're in an electric car right now, but the big car companies seem to be now totally dedicated towards cleaner fuels, and hydrogen is a good idea because not everybody can find charging points where they want to find them right now. And if you've got hydrogen as an alternative, not an alternative, as a supplementary fuel for a car, then people in rural areas, for example, could just fill up in, I hate to use the word petrol station, but maybe there'll just be hydrogen stations soon, and then they can be on their way, right?
And it would just take a few minutes too.
Yeah, it's such, I mean, we need to get everything in play if we're going to deal with this problem because it's so urgent right now.
Yeah, I think we just need to inspire everyone to do something.
Yeah.
Rather than talk about exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people think that, to be climate friendly or to care about sustainability, there's a checklist of the things that you need to do, and there's only those things.
Yeah.
But there's so many more things that one can do.
Yeah. So we had a psychologist on the show yesterday. We were talking about the electric vehicles, not hydrogen ones at the time, but Norway has like nearly 100% electric vehicles.
Wow.
And asked how it worked. This professor from a business school in Norway said they used envy. So they allowed all the electric cars to go in the bus lane. And all the people, he said, in their gas-guzzling cars were looking in envy at the electric cars in the bus lane, and they all started switching to electric cars.
Yeah.
So sometimes there are all kinds of human psychological tactics.
Yeah, or the tax incentives.
Yeah.
That helps too. Well, one of the things that, for carbon, I was not very much on the nose, but more on the nose that whenever I had an interview or talked about the album, I would always say it's based on the costs and effects of climate change. And every topic was based on that very clearly, versus now with mycelium, what I'm trying to do after working with scientists of like, how can artists help amplify scientific communication? Then they would say, try to tell the emotional truth. So we've been working on this mycelium suite of telling the emotional truth of plankton, of fungi, and of science to try to connect on a deeper level with people rather than just throwing data points and, a lot of information of just trying to dig deeper in the heart, because I think that if we get to the heart, we can get to the action.
Yes.
I can't stay in my fit. What I'm gonna do if I really want to, but baby.